Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Going Grad, brought to you by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association and Vanderbilt Career Center. I'm Sarah Whitney Anderson, and I'm one of the directors for Alumni and Student Engagement, and I'm so glad you could join us from wherever you are this afternoon. I apologize we started a few minutes late. There was a couple technical difficulties, so I wanted to make sure that everyone's able to be with us today. So I'm excited that you could all be here. Today's webinar will last around 45 minutes with time at the end for questions. If you do have a question, please feel free to put those in the chat box and you can send them directly to me and we will get those addressed at some point. Recording today's webinar and post it on our webinar page on VU Connect. We will also include it in a follow-up email later on. I'm so excited to have our career coach with us today, Amanda Moore. She has been serving as a career coach at Vanderbilt's Career Center for more than 3 years. She started as a coach dedicated to first-year students and undergraduate students. She currently serves as a coach for education and social science students. In her role, she coaches undergraduate, graduate, and recent alumni in all areas of career exploration and professional development. Before working at Vanderbilt, Amanda worked at the University of Alabama School of Social Work and coordinator of student services, where she worked in the development of student ambassador program and revamped both the bachelor's and master's programs for recruitment strategy. Additionally, while Amanda was pursuing her master's in social work at the University of Michigan, she worked as a graduate student, staff assistant in the career services office. Her philosophy related to student services can be summed up in one simple phrase: it's okay to ask for help. I'm so excited to have her here, and I'll kick over the presentation to her.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah Whitney, and you are such a good introducer. I'm so flattered. Thank you for walking through some of my past experiences. I hope that kind of tells everybody who's attending today a little bit about how not only I can help support, but also how the Career Center can help support them. Today, we're going to be walking through the presentation entitled Going Grad, to help students who are either thinking about going to graduate school, already are planning on doing it. Hopefully we'll be able to walk through some steps on supporting you. In that conversation, we're going to focus on 5 main components: from your motivation, program selection and fit, funding, timeline, and resources. Starting with the motivation, which could also be summarized with defining your why. Are you running towards something as opposed to running away from something else? And you can see here 3 kind of main points. A lot of times students, even alumni who attend graduate school or are thinking about graduate school, can kind of maybe be hazy in their, I always wanted to go to grad school, or it'll probably happen at some point. And our goal, not just in this conversation today, but in supporting you in applying to graduate school or finding fit, is for it to be an intentional step in your professional development. And that all starts with answering this one question: why do you want to go to graduate school? We also want to put together some samplings of why. Neither one of these are bad or good, but there are some that are more in that mindset of intentionality. Clearly defined reasons to go could be it's necessary in the next step for my career goals, or you can describe the skill set or knowledge set that you would get as attending this program and how it fits with your future goals. You're passionate about it. Some other ones that, again, are just a more surface level, but are definitely valid reasons for going is, I'm not really sure what I want to do. Extending your exploration, or a recession, or economy's bad. I kind of want to invest more in my educational level so that I could maybe find another pathway. Societal pressures that can come familial or from your career and your peers, or again, I've always wanted to go. Apart from your motivation, an intentional piece of going grad is program selection. And I would like to say a big part of this is individualized. So being open-minded is very important, because again, it's individualized. What's important to you and to your career goals might be different than what's important even to someone who has the same educational background or experience background. So again, unpacking what your priorities might be and thinking more than rank. We encourage exploration, which could be a conversation about being innovative with the faculty you want to connect with, or if you're interested in research, who are your thought leaders in the field that you want to potentially be connected to? And a little note here, some top tier programs can be housed or hidden even a little bit in some lesser known universities, and there might even be dual degree options. So when it comes to program selection or finding fit, being open-minded is a big part of the conversation. Next, it really is about prioritizing what matters most to you. So this could kind of almost be thinking back when you were in college, or as you're in college, defining your values and your goals and how they align with your program specifically. Because if you can kind of speak to that why, that motivation, you can kind of understand a little bit more clearly which program best fits for your long-term goals. That can go from just doing some research, which if you need help in navigating that, we've got great resources. We're going to talk about how to do that today. Weighing pros and cons, sorting your priorities, walking through intentionally, again, there's that word, your points of consideration. And the last point in prioritizing what matters most is something that I think can be really helpful. If you're ever feeling stuck, which sometimes I do too, visual thinking can really help. That's something actually we're really known for at Vanderbilt's Career Center. And I think if you got an email from Sarah Whitney yesterday, if you registered, and we've also dropped that link to all participants today, on the Career Center website, we've created Picture Your Career, which has taken a lot of visual thinking activities we do in coaching appointments and made them accessible to everyone. So now until eternity, as long as it's living on the Career Center website, you can download this visual thinking workbook. And I would encourage you to explore it. It walks from things like exploration, managing stress or managing your emotion, job search. And you could even tweak and tailor some of these activities into what you're going through presently. So I pulled out this one specifically because it's called Organizing Your Internship Search. We could very easily translate that to organizing your grad school search, or just organizing your search in general for anything. I think one of the hardest parts and most important parts with grad school applications is staying organized. So how this might help is it really does go back into the why and your priorities. So what is your goal? You can see in the activity workbook, we have broken it down from how does it help? So it'll help you kind of define, is this an activity that I could tweak or make work for my exploration? And then picturing it. So it walks you through literally like, hey, draw 2 vertical lines on your piece of paper, make some columns, and walk through your first goal would be my internship goal or my grad school goal. So it could have disciplines, dual degrees, research opportunities, steps to achieve it. So it might be, talking to an admissions counselor, or preparing your letters of recommendation, or doing interviews with faculty and staff who are currently working in that program. And then the third step in this is going to be launch. So then taking from your goal and the steps to achieve it, putting them in order of priority, like which should you do first? Should you talk to someone who's currently working in the program, or should you talk to admissions, or should you go ahead and get your letters of recommendation ready? And it's going to look different for everybody else. So another really big tip with this is do it at your own pace. And especially if you're doing this at home virtually, give yourself just 30 minutes to sit down and walk through your priorities. And I think reflection is a big part of that as well. So if you're kind of struggling with some key points to consider or steps on kind of unpacking what are your values or what is important in your grad school search, these are some clusters that we have identified with other students that might speak to you. So it could be location. I want to go to school near where I'm from, something accessible, or I want to move to a different state. It could be size. I want to go to a smaller institution because that's what I'm used to. That's what I experienced in undergrad. Or I want to go to a bigger university to have more exposure to cultural diversity, to different people's opinions, environment, again, admissions requirements. So knowing, do I have the GPA, or am I a stronger candidate here or there? So admissions requirements, maybe you don't want to take the GRE, maybe you do want to take the GRE. What academic concentrations they offer faculty, how much does it cost is a part of the conversation, and also are there funding? So these are some things to consider if you're doing an activity about your goals and your priorities. A really great step when it comes to identifying program fit would be connecting with your program of interest. 2 big suggestions I always give students is to contact the admissions. There's almost always either an admissions counselor or admissions representative or a program coordinator who entire job is to answer your questions about what does this program have to offer? What do your graduates do with a master's in XYZ? And these people play little to no role in the decision of your candidacy. So it's a great person to kind of have in your back pocket to just ask questions, ask for resources, ask to get connected to a current student if that's something you're interested in. A big tip we give is maybe identify 3 or 4 key questions that you maybe align with those priorities or values of what's important in your program, and use those as benchmarking places to compare your programs of interest. Another suggestion is to visit campus. Obviously, there's limitations to that now. Majority of students who I've talked to, whether it's virtual or in person, connecting with a program in a virtual open house or stepping foot on campus. I know for me personally, I'm from Alabama. I went to the University of Michigan, as you heard in my bio, for grad school. And I was like, can I survive these harsh winters, or are these people my people? So getting the first step on campus and interacting in the department really did add to, I think that this is the right place for me. And again, there are going to be places that are doing that virtually right now. Okay, this is probably not the most fun thing to talk about when it comes to grad school search or getting prepared for grad school, but it is an important thing to think about, is the money of it, right? So there are different strategies in paying for grad school. These are the 5 most common ones. And this all of this information really came from the Insider Higher Ed study that they did on how students are paying for it. So it could be getting an employer. I think that's kind of a dream, is have someone else pay for it. Or again, having someone else pay for it, maybe through the university, a grad assistantship. Work for the grad school. So not necessarily an assistantship, but looking for a job within the university. Borrowing smart, and using available credit. And then this is a graph that kind of walks you through, again, through that higher ed study, how students typically pay for it. So, I mean, a lot of students do pay for grad programs through borrowing. Maybe it's because their programs are shorter, or they just really see the long-term investment in having higher education. Grad assistantships, grants, scholarships, there's a lot of different ways, student earnings, that could potentially help you find a way to fund your higher education pathway. I mentioned something that I think is really important for students to kind of unpack. Maybe you've heard about assistantships. So what are they? Grad assistantships are when you are paid, or they pay for not only your program, but potentially a stipend. You have a certain number of hours a week where you work within that department. Caveat, it does not have to be within the department where you're pursuing your degree. So you could, when I was working, this is how I paid for my school. When I was going to apply to grad school, I was looking for funding opportunities, and in some information that they sent out to recruit students, there was like, hey, we have a handful of grad assistantships. They are pretty competitive, but it's important, if you're interested in those things, to invest in that application process. And, there's stipends, and there's those assistantships where I got to work in a grad office that was directly related to my long-term goal. So it also could provide opportunities to build different skills. But let's say I had a background in psychology. I could potentially also apply for assistantships within the pathway that I got my undergrad. So there are a lot of different ways to find grad assistantships. Where to find them? Departmental pages, university job boards. Some universities will put it in their career boards, and asking. Sometimes they're kind of hidden, but asking that person that we told you to connect with, that grad admissions counselor, or current faculty current students and faculty, that is. How to get them, there's usually a separate application process, and it's usually contingent on you getting into that grad program. Usually I have found that students who are looking for assistantships, it requires you to apply to an early admissions deadline. So again, being organized, knowing when they have admissions deadlines, if there is an early admissions deadline, then you'll be able to potentially be a candidate for those things. All right. I think that I've kind of reiterated this a handful of times. So I've always been told if someone repeats something, it's because it's important. But you're going to see that word individual again. So we're getting into timeline. I would say even more so in grad school, this is very individualized, whether it's from when you're going to start or when you're going to apply. Timelines could also be invested in, your program has a fall and a winter and a summer start date, or it just has one. So timelines can be very individual. I think a big note in that is give yourself time. If being organized is one of the most important things in the process, you have to give yourself time to walk through the process, because there are usually a lot of moving parts. And if you can't submit an entire application, even if all of your parts are completed, but your letters of recommendation haven't been submitted, a lot of schools won't even review your application. So you don't want to lose that kind of deposit or that time investment that you've made. So give yourself time. A healthy timeline that we suggest between 6 and 18 months. It kind of depends on where you are. Sometimes there's a faster turnaround because you've changed your mind, or you've had a conversation with your supervisor like, hey, we think that this would be a good thing for you. There's a lot of things, a lot of pathways on why your timeline might be expedited, but as much time as you can give to it, I would encourage, just don't be reactionary and take your time to do it intentionally. There's that word again. It is a huge investment. So we want to give it that intentionality in your due diligence. This is kind of a thing to keep in mind as well, is I always say, do as I say, not as I did. Apply to more than one grad school. I applied to one grad school because I knew kind of what was really important to me. I wanted to get out of Alabama and go to the #1 school of social work. That was kind of like my dream. I say, always apply to your dream school. That's that #1. If lightning strikes, apply to your dream school and think about, like, why would you be a really good candidate? Maybe you add to the diversity because you're from Alabama coming to Michigan, or maybe you just happen to be the ideal candidate that they're looking for that year because you've had past experiences in XYZ. But when you're thinking about the golden rule, it would be 1, your dream school, 2, kind of top programs that hit all of your pros and cons, those values and priorities that we talked about earlier, but also, and you're a strong candidate in. And then 2, that we would consider more like safety schools, schools that you have a very strong, maybe they have a lower GPA requirement and you have like a 3.75, or you have past experiences that are directly related to the candidate that you're looking for. So it's good to kind of diversify your search as well. Okay, so then we're getting into the how, the resources. I think it's important just to know that the Career Center and the Alumni Association, we both offer a lot of different resources. I think Sarah Whitney said it earlier that my philosophy is it's okay to ask for help, but you can do some of these things on your own. Feel free to go on the Career Center website and find resources like this application flow chart that we have, this process that walks you through the 3 kind of main phases we talked about today: the why, the where, and the how. And what I love about this flow chart is and I'll just zoom into one of them, is it walks you to the phase and then it asks you a question. And if you can't answer the question, it gives you strategies on how to answer that question. So are my application components complete? Can I submit on time? Have I submitted additional applications on time for scholarships or financial aid? And then it's like, oh, if you haven't done that, here are some strategies to do that. So I love that this process is a self-assessment process when it comes to your application, but it also helps you stay organized. And if you can't figure out how to do it, it gives you a strategy on how to do that. And that's just one of the many resources we have on the Career Center website. Another one is kind of walking through the basics of what is usually involved in applying to grad school. What are the materials I'm going to have to put forward? So recommendations are traditionally a part of that, usually 2 or 3, maybe sometimes more. If you're coming out of undergraduate, they usually sit directly out of undergraduate programs. They're usually assuming that majority of those are academic, but if you've been working in the professional field for a while, there are also tips and tricks on that, on the number as how you would decide between your recommenders. Essays like personal statements or maybe a diversity statement, test scores like the GRE and the GMAT, transcripts, which I think as Vanderbilt alumni and current students, it's pretty accessible for you to download. Academic courses that might make you a stronger candidate in your experiences. So sometimes students kind of want to walk through what makes an all-star candidate. Everybody wants to be an all-star candidate, and it is more than numbers. It's more than your GPA. So an all-star candidate has a strong background or experiences that are relevant. So what maybe you're doing now or what you did in college. You have a clear insight. So walking through that why, your motivation and your values, that's going to help you come across as a stronger AllStar candidate. Your vision is connected from their academics and work. Like you can very clearly define how your academics, your its professional experiences, and how this grad program are all tied to your future goals. You have an understanding of the program, the strengths and weaknesses. I think being able to also speak to their specific offerings and specializations as they maybe relate to what you're looking at. So it's connecting to a program, not only just knowing your own motivation, but making that connection from you and that program. And also being able to articulate, to speak intentionally about how your interests are aligned with that program's offerings and what you bring to the program. A part of that is being able, again, to articulate is to tell your story, you at your best. So there is an activity that we wanted to point you to that I would encourage you to take time, again, just maybe 30 minutes, to walk through how your past leads to your potential. When all of these things about being an AllStar candidate are about unpacking your experiences as they align to your career goal, walk through, draw this kind of past skills, talents, and interests and how they have potential uses as related to your future goals. And this is going to help you convey your key skills, not necessarily to an employer, but to a search committee. If you are writing a personal statement or you are having an interview potentially for a grad assistantship, being able to connect intentionally your past experiences, your skills, your strengths, you at your best, to potential uses in the field, because you want them to feel like your success is their success and the success of their industry. You want to be the Harry Potter of the story. So the last thing I'm really going to touch on is being that memorable candidate. And a lot of these are, I think, things you've probably already thought about from what we talked about. What can you and only you, what makes you uniquely qualified? What do you bring to the program from that activity? What about your past experiences have prepared you for an advanced degree? Why are you interested? There's that why again. What do you intend to get out of it? What do you intend to do as it's related to your career goals? How does this particular program fit into your vision? Like if there is a researcher you want to partner with, or there is a dual degree or a concentration that you'll get to specialize in, or a certification that they pay for, what are you specifically interested in that program? Some of those could answer that question. And why is now the right time for you to pursue a graduate degree? If you can answer these questions in a personal statement, in an interview, this is how you stand out as a memorable candidate. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Whitney, who's going to walk through a couple of other pieces as it is applied to going grad.
Perfect. Thank you so much for already the information you've shared, Amanda. I don't know about y'all, but there's a lot going on with grad school. And there's a lot of questions to ask. So I think this is a really great starting point to start gathering those thoughts and processing what your grad school needs are. So there's been this little thing called COVID the past couple of months. Don't know if you've heard about it, but it's made a pretty big deal. And I don't know about you all, but it's changed our lives, I think, in a major way. So it can also change your grad school experience. So let's talk about the COVID impact. There's been 5 major trends that we are seeing. And the main takeaway here is really looking at what you're interested in your institution, and what are they sharing? What kind of opportunities are maybe evolving and changing, and therefore what kind of opportunities are being offered for you? So you'll see application deadline extensions and changes, alternative GRE, GMAT, and other exams are available, waived entrance exams, virtual interviewing, and prospective and admitting student events are moving online. So definitely be sure to check out the COVID FAQ page on your on the institution you're interested in, because this could change things and just gives you a more in-depth look at what that institution is doing. You can go to the next slide. So graduate school. I don't know about you all, but I always feel like numbers puts a lot of perspective on things. So thank you to Amanda for pulling these stats for us. But 25 to 30% of Vanderbilt undergrads go on to graduate school right away. So graduate school is a very important conversation with our students. And I'm really excited that the Career Center began offering career coaching to graduate school starting in the 2018-2019 year. I think that they do such wonderful work for our undergraduate students, so it only makes sense to offer to grad students. And in case you didn't know, they also offer grad school, or they offer career coaching for alumni up to 2 years out. So it just makes sense to make sure that our students are being covered in all aspects. They want to have a better understanding on how they can help them navigate the graduate school process. And I take that to mean both students that are interested in grad school and you're an undergraduate or within that 2 years, or if you are in grad school currently at Vanderbilt. But let's also talk about what that role exactly means. So coaches are experts in the process, not experts on every school program. I always tell alumni that I work with that I'm a generalist. I might not know everything specifically, but I can help you show what resources I know and show you how I go through the process. How do I research institutions? What advice do I have? What kind of questions can we find? And we walk through the process together so that you can gain a better understanding of what you're looking at, and even just figuring out what questions do you have. So we want to be very clear with the Career Center's expectations, but this does include help you think through the motivations, what further questions should you ask of yourself and others, and how to prepare for actual applications and decision-making process. The Career Center also does a great job of what kind of resources are available. So connecting you with the Writing Center, connecting you with the graduate school on campus. Even if you aren't applying to that graduate school, this could give you a better in-depth look at what kind of opportunities they are having, and gives you that access to what an admissions counselor, what did they look for, especially being on campus. So this additional support beyond one-on-one coaching, dedicated graduate school coaching, that is what the Career Center does. Also, I'm in alumni relations, and so we offer our own alumni career resources. A wonderful Amanda and her colleagues, they will help the alumni up to 2 years out, but they also have, current students on campus. So that is a lot of people that they need to take care of. So when you're 2 years out, come see me. Again, I am that generalist, but I would be happy to help you with the resources that we provide, connect you with alumni that have gone through this same kind of career path, connect you with graduate schools, whatever resource we can help you with. Between the two offices, I think we can connect you to the best option. And I already linked both the graduate school resources within the Career Center, as well as all Career Center alumni opportunities and resources. So definitely check those out if you have not. We also recommend the Writing Studio. I don't know about you, but writing is not always my forte. I don't do it near as much as I did when I was in college. And so it's sometimes just a good reminder of where does that comma go, and making sure that your writing is up to the best that it can be. Also make sure that you're looking into different programming between our offices, but also offices on campus and the institution you're looking at. What kind of law school fair, various sessions focusing on grad school, speaking with current graduate students, both that have left your undergraduate institution, but where maybe even potential students that have gone on to that grad school you want to look into. That's going to be wonderful advice and real life experience that you're going to hear from. So highly recommend looking at those resources. So now we will get into questions. I even saw that we already had one, so I'm excited to go ahead and answer that.
And I apologize if opening the chat made y'all see that a little early, but I was trying to get a leg up before the chat. So I don't know. I don't know if that interrupted your view, but we can get into these for sure.
No, I think it's good to move on to questions, since we want to make sure that we're answering what questions do you have. That is what this webinar is really all about. So we'll go ahead and start with, is it better to ask these specific questions to an admissions rep or to a professor who will help make the acceptance decision? That was a great question.
Yeah, so I think when it kind of depends on the question. Specific questions about the admissions process, your materials, who best to connect with, definitely reaching out to the admissions rep when they're kind of more generalized. Connecting with faculty would be or professors, if you're trying to make a good argument, like you're trying to identify what the course is going to entail, you're trying to have that kind of pros and cons list of what you're going to learn, what you could specialize in. I would say potentially reaching out to both. The admissions rep is going to be more of an expert in the process and resources, who and how to talk to people, where the professors are going to have a more insight into their classroom, their research. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a strategy because you don't know who's going to be on the committee, the review committee. So it's not like you could just search professors who are on the review committee and try to get some bonus points there. I think anytime you interact with faculty in a program that you're interested in, it's always important. And admissions reps, you want to put your best professional foot forward. And I think we've got.
I was trying to look online, Amanda. Do you know that the
Writing
Writing Center is available? Is it the same 2 years out?
I am not 100% certain of that. It should be listed on their website, but that's not something I could speak definitively on.
I don't see any gaps, so I will make sure to contact them, and in our follow-up email, I will let you know for sure or not. We also have some writing online resources on the alumni page, so definitely be sure to check those out.
I'm going to get into Danielle's questions. I'm 3 years out of graduation and planning on applying to grad school next year. Are any alumni resources coaching available to me? I think that that's something that would point you to Sarah Whitney.
Hey, that's me. Yes, so if you look at obviously we host a lot of webinars, but you can call me, and again, I'm the generalist, but we can walk through those same questions. What I honestly typically do, thank you, Amanda and the Career Center for the heavy work, but I use their resources. They have wonderful questions, and I'm all about partnerships. So I use a lot of the resources that she's used in this presentation to help you walk through any questions that you have deciding on your graduate school. You might already have decided which graduate school you're planning on, but I am definitely the person that you can call and talk to, and we'll work through whatever questions you have and looking into that institution, and I can help you connect with alumni that may have already gone there or however address what questions you have. As far as specific online resources, I typically do tell our alumni to reach out to Vanderbilt's similar school, just because they always want to help our students that have gone here. And that can give you just a leg up on what the application process looks like. Every school is different, but I think it sometimes can help you figure out what questions you might have for that admissions counselor by talking to your own institution that you've already gone to. I'm trying to think of any specific online resources. We also do have career coaches. So if you're wanting to really get in-depth look at your career goals, we have wonderful career coaches that are all Vanderbilt alumni and can help you really look at the gamut of your opportunities, whether it is going to grad school or going a different career direction. And they are all wonderful and typically help us with our webinars. So let me know if I did not address anything in that question and if I can help further explain anything.
Yeah, great. I did see a question. I have a couple of resources for going overseas, but I first want to address Justin's question about specific suggestions for PhD applications. So the main difference is you really need to have an idea of who you want to partner with or who you want the research kind of plan, because there are funding pieces to it. It also has a different application process in the sense of there is almost always an interview component, whereas for graduate programs in general, master's program, they're not necessarily required. And I think that's because of this funding component. It is very important. You can take a lot of these practices with which kind of questions you're interested in, finding the programs, that kind of thing, even working with a career coach for finding your PhD program and working on your application components. But I would say my biggest suggestion is finding faculty that you'd want to partner with, learning about their research process. What does the university what are their expectations and requirements of PhD students? Not just faculty. I would also strongly encourage you to talk to potentially current PhD students. And for those of you who don't know, typically, obviously, I think undergraduate has the biggest population. And after that, you might have a cohort of 300 or so master students. But then if you get into a PhD program, they're much smaller, like maybe 9 to 12 humans within that department. So they are more competitive. It is very, very important to be in communication with the program chairs and department heads as opposed to just an admissions representative. If you have any other specific questions about PhD programs, you can always bring those to Sarah, Whitney, and myself. We can help you either walk through the process of finding those people or prepare for those kinds of interviews and things. As far as recommended online resources for applying to grad schools overseas, there are some resources that are listed on the Career Center website specifically for international students, but I always tell students you can flip those on their head. Specifically, I think it's called Go Abroad. I'll drop that in the chat. Another one is called Go Overseas. I'm going to drop those in the chat just so that y'all can kind of see. But if you go to any resource that is, I don't know if y'all can see my window. If you go just at any resource that is meant for something else, look and see if they have a graduate resource connected to it. Or I'm going to drop the Go Overseas and I'm going to grab the Go Abroad one. All panelists and attendees. There's one. The Princeton Review is also one that we use often. And you can, again, search by program name or you can search by country. It kind of depends. This is where the conversation when applying to grad school or PhD programs is so much different than applying to undergrad. It's kind of important to know what's important to you, what you're looking for, because if you do have an idea of country, one of the suggestions I always give, even on top of looking through these resources, would be looking for universities that already have a history of bringing in international United States students into their program, because then they have walked through the process before. I hope that answered your question. Do we have another one drop in?
You do. So the question was, as Vanderbilt alumni, do we get any discount to test prep resources? Yes. So I'm not allowed to give it over broadcasting, but if you'll email me, I can share the discount with you. So just email me. You should have all received an email from me actually yesterday with the reminder, as well as I'll send a follow-up, so you can feel free to send me an email.
I dropped that Go Abroad as well.
Perfect.
Okay, Justin has another question. If you want to do some research assistantship or volunteer on career development, I plan to apply for a PhD in career development field. Do you have any faculty? If you're looking in career development, you obviously want to connect with the career services office. It's either within your discipline or the centralized versus decentralized office for those specific kind of programs. I would love to kind of know if you were looking at applying to a career development program at Vanderbilt versus somewhere else, or, there's two pathways. If you're trying to get experience to prove, that you have unpacked that this career development PhD program speaks to you understand that it's something that you do want to pursue, having experience in a career services office would be to your benefit, because you could evidence, I know that this program is great for me because I've worked with students from career exploration to job search to so-and-so and so-and-so. So that would be probably a suggestion as well. I'm not familiar of any faculty that just pop off the top of my head of somebody who's doing research and career development at Vanderbilt. Great question. So we have a question about who you would ask to write rec letters when you're not fresh out of undergrad other than a manager at work. If you're not fresh out of, I think even if you're a couple years out, if you can connect to at least one faculty member, that would be to your benefit. And I know that I say that and there might be some hesitation, especially if you haven't been in contact with somebody for a long time, but I would tell you from personal experience and from working with students who have navigated that, it's just like networking. You reach back out to your faculty, hey, Dr. So-and-so, reintroduce yourself, tell them how you know them. And then you start it immediately with what you're asking. I'm looking, since I've graduated with my degree in so-and-so and so-and-so, I've made a plan to now pursue a degree in this. As a part of my application, I'm required to, submit some letters of recommendation. And I really wanted someone who could speak to my academic performance. And you were the first person that came to mind because maybe their class was a pivotal moment, or maybe their class had an impact in your long-term career goals. So don't feel too far gone, even if it's been a handful of years. I know I very seldomly talk to past faculty, but faculty relish in those moments to partner in your success. So I encourage that. Apart from a manager, you could always have, if you volunteer at an organization, whenever you're thinking about your application, you want to think, and your recommenders, who's going to speak to how I'm going to navigate this program successfully. So if it has to do with what you're currently doing, if you're going to talk about in your personal statement your job, you probably need to have your current supervisor. If you're going to talk about, well, the reason I'm interested in social work is because while I've been working in business, I've been volunteering with, the Susan G. Coming Brace for the Cure, and I have a passion. I've identified that. And then someone that you work for in Susan G. Coming would be a good recommender. So it's very individualized, but I wouldn't get too caught up in title of who your recommenders are. I think a lot of students want that kind of clout behind their recommender. I mean, if you know the Dalai Lama, cool, use the Dalai Lama, as they say in like Legally Blonde. But if you don't, then use somebody who is going to be able to be your advocate and to speak to how you're going to navigate it successfully. And also, I try to say, make it as easy as possible for them. So if you haven't talked to your faculty, or you want to use your volunteer coordinator, let them know again why you're reaching out, and make it easy. Like, hey, I'd be happy to jump on a Zoom call, grab a coffee, social distance, of course, to kind of walk through why I'm interested in this. And I would be more than happy to share my resume so you can see what I've been up to since then, which obviously there are some places where you can get some resume help, your girl. So that's kind of my strategy whenever I'm helping students navigate unpacking who would be a good recommender. I hope that was helpful. Okay. Do we offer career development curriculum for undergraduate students? I wonder if that would be, okay. So I think what you're trying to imply, Justin, or asking about is if there are any kind of career related courses that are required for Vanderbilt students. At this time, that is not a requirement, but if so, usually a course that it wouldn't be required, it would be probably an elective or something, maybe as a part of programming for a first-year student. Nothing with career development is required at majority of universities, unfortunately. But what I would say is usually that programming, in the past, our director has led a class. We will visit classrooms. So typically that curriculum is developed through the Career Center, because we are the experts on campus. We are the experts at Vanderbilt on from search and exploration to application and deliverables of your professional self. I feel like I've been talking for a hot minute. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, and any last questions? Again, thank you all so much for being with us this afternoon. Give it 30 seconds.
Oh, I'm going to put up our information, Sarah Whitney.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
That might be helpful. So I think Sarah Whitney and I both really enjoyed the conversation being had in the chat. I'm sure we're wrapping up. We might have gotten one more, but I want to encourage, definitely feel free to reach out to me. Yes, I serve students typically 2 years out. So if Sarah Whitney is your better contact, know that we do collaborate between offices. So she is very knowledgeable on what she does with career development, but you have access to a lot of resources. So again, it's okay to ask for help and take advantage of the resources that you have.
Yes, I echo everything that Amanda just said. Between the two of us, we will make sure that you get to the right people that you need. I just want to give a huge thank you to Amanda for helping me with this conversation, allowing me to be a part of it. I learned a lot of tidbits today and reflected a lot of my own grad school experience. So thank you so much for being here this afternoon. I want to encourage you all to make sure you check out all the career resources and events, both electronic and hopefully in person one day, provided to you by the Vanderbilt Alumni Association and the Career Center. I just dropped a feedback link in the chat, and I would love to hear if you just take a minute to fill that out and let us know how this conversation helped you, so we can continue to help you in your career journey. I will also send a follow-up email later this week with the questions that we weren't able to solve, as well as the archived link of this webinar. and any future offerings. So thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.